Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Webster Gomez. I'm a student at Western Carolina University. I'm enrolled in the Project Management Graduate School, and today I'm going to be presenting my Project Management Manual. The purpose of this manual is to establish the general requirements, the standards and expectations for the conduct of a nuclear projects manager. It intends to describe the roles, the responsibilities of a nuclear project manager. It also wants to provide guidelines, processes, and techniques available to enhance the effectiveness of managing projects. This manual intends to make project managers aware of fundamental project management considerations and how they can be applied in the Duke Energy specific application. The scope for this project manual is to apply to all nuclear project managers. The attachments and reference procedures provide direction for the conduct of a nuclear project manager and is also specific to the functional area work groups within nuclear projects. This manual is not intended to replace or conflict with any governing procedure or policy requirements. The mission of this manual is to oversee the design, planning, and delivery of quality projects. It intends to enhance nuclear performance in a safe and effective and predictable manner. It also wants to maintain and administer project management standards, project control standards, and contract management standards. It intends to achieve this through a focus on safety, cohesive teamwork, the highest level of quality, substantial planning, and also utilizing an achievable schedule. Challenges, KPIs, and AFIs. Challenges that a project manager can expect to endure include budget and schedule challenge reviews, radiological planning and radiological safety, nuclear grade material procurement, qualification training, site access requirements, security logistics, and industrial safety. KPIs are industry performance indicators. It assigns a numerical value to an organization based on specific performance variables. These variables include things such as safety events, safety near misses, human performance errors, rework, schedule adherence, budget consciousness, work management, radiological work practices, assessment findings, and quality control measurements. AFIs are areas for improvement. They're typically found during assessments and inspections. The results are specified in actions being assigned to address certain areas of concern. The actions are assigned a due date. They describe the process to be improved based on the finding, and they're tracked by the station's corrective actions team. The nuclear industry is very unique in nature. Therefore, many of the key industry processes are unique as well. The first of which being Core 4. It is a tool that has been developed as a safety and human performance measure. It is intended to be used prior to performing any task, and the goal is to maintain a safety conscious work environment, eliminate risks in the task and work area, and ensure adherence to procedure and work order instructions. It does this via a variety of processes listed here. The first being Take a Minute. A Take a Minute is a short, scripted set of questions that is intended to be used prior to beginning any task, anytime a change in work environment occurs, and prior to commencing work after extended breaks. The goal of this tool is to refocus on the task at hand, present the potential for changing conditions, and mitigate or highlight hazards in the work area. Next process are procedure use and adherence. This process ensures proper use of task instructions is applied to each task. It also encourages the improvement of guiding procedures as see fit by those using said procedures. The STAR tool stands for Stop, Think, Act, and Review. This promotes an effective thought process to avoid complacency and humor performance errors while following items such as job instructions and procedures. The last item of Core 4 are pre-job briefs. These briefs are meant to gain alignment with the participants that are intended to perform the task. These briefs are typically conducted away from the work area and prior to beginning the task in the field. The next industry process is INPO 19-003, Staying on Top. This is a principal document that provides values and behaviors for establishing a culture that achieves success through continuous improvement. The first item is setting long-term direction. Intend to commit to a culture of continuous improvement. Use strategies that support the mission and vision of the organization. And it's also comprised of over-communication of well-defined culture, mission, vision, and strategic frameworks. It reviews the effectiveness of values and behaviors to develop organizational culture. And it promotes a culture that supports the ability to self-identify and self-correct. Leadership and talent development are the second aspect of INPO 19-003. This aims to build and maintain effective leaders within the organization. It ensures the organizational effectiveness throughout. It also encourages personal ownership of talent development. It wants to ensure that employees are aware of the organization's investment in their growth. Third item are excellence standards. Adherence to the highest level of performance standards is the goal of INPO 1903. It ensures that standards of excellence are clearly established, well communicated, and exclusively followed. New standards intend to be identified and quickly adopted by the organization, and standards that may be less defined intend to be clarified, understood, and adhered to. The next item is continuous learning. This principal document wants to utilize all sources and methods of increasing personal and institutional learning. It wants to ensure that each opportunity to mentor, teach, and coach should be taken advantage of. It encourages leaders to take and dedicate personal time and effort for their organization to learn, utilize self-assessments, operating experience, and benchmarking as needed. And it wants to encourage each member of the organization to be committed to their personal growth and continuous learning. The last piece of INPO 1903 is self-awareness and self-correction. The engaged workforce takes pride in owning its performance and correcting its own conflicts. It makes use of all available resources and should be encouraged to identify performance gaps. Members of the organization should not hesitate to challenge underperformance. Employees are encouraged to participate and know that they are empowered to fix and find problems. Leaders of the organization should be open to being challenged. The last piece of the key industry process is INPO 15-005. This is a principal document that was released in 2016 in response to a declining trend in nuclear industry performance and the senior leadership's unawareness of said trend. This process is highly visible and is under constant communication down to the site and work group level. During the research, there were 5 traits that were discovered and have since been adopted into the nuclear industry. The first trait is that the team is aligned around a common purpose, vision, and goals. Second trait is that members should be committed to the success of the team. The third trait states that team talents, roles, and responsibilities should be clearly stated. The Fourth trait is that the team should create a positive atmosphere of mutual trust and respect among one another. And the last trait is the team decision making and conflict resolution should be an effective means of communication and problem solving among the team. As part of this process, fleet initiatives were established by our organization. The first being safety. This includes personal, nuclear, radiological, and environmental. The next was employee engagement, under the scope that an engaged workforce is a successful workforce. Optimized reliability was the third fleet initiative. The longevity of equipment within a power plant is an important factor regarding safety, profit, and reliability. The next initiative was maximized capacity. In addition to creating power reliably, we want to ensure that we are safely maximizing the capacity of our power generation facilities. Advocacy. We want to ensure that we advocate for the value that will be added to the assets of each project that we embark upon. Lastly, for the fleet initiatives was industrial leadership. The constant promotion of safety, employee empowerment, and advocacy is for the betterment of the workforce. In addition to our fleet initiatives, the individual power generation sites have adopted site initiatives. Brunswick Nuclear Plant adopted into the organization a culture based on operating experience, employee surveys, and lessons learned. The first being safety. We want to ensure no one gets hurt. We want to maintain a line of sight to our nuclear core. We want to keep our radiation exposure as low as reasonably achievable. And we want to protect our environment. The next initiative revolves around quality. We want to ensure that we're performing our work right the first time. We want to adhere to our standards. We want to ensure that every member of the organization is being self-critical, and want to value feedback up and down the organization, as well as left and right. The last site initiative was based around predictability. We want to prepare and execute with excellence. We want to meet our commitments to our employees, to our shareholders, to our customers. We want to take actions to improve our efficiency. And we want to recognize wins every day. As a project manager in the nuclear industry, there are various responsibilities that will be at hand. We want to work with our internal and external stakeholders to define the project concept, create a process to bring it to fruition. We want to maintain accountability for a project team capable of meeting and exceeding client expectations. We want to create an accurate timeline of project completion to ensure that tasks are finished within the scope of the assignment. We want to anticipate and prepare mitigating factors for potential conflicts that may occur during the project lifecycle. We want to ensure that the project is completed within the allocated budget while remaining transparent and realistic regarding costs with our client. In addition, we want to maintain open lines of communication with stakeholders for updates and feedback to ensure satisfaction of the deliverables and the process. We want to evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the project process. We want to identify the shortcomings and develop solutions for those conflicts. The project manager has the ultimate responsibility, authority, and accountability for all aspects of the project. Project manager is responsible for recommending reevaluation of the project if changes are detected, specifically ones that alter the decision to proceed. Project manager also needs to integrate all elements of the project into the daily operations of the end owner. A project manager should be proactive in all regards. They should manage the project in accordance with corporate accounting and project authorization procedures. They should also implement project controls and report mechanisms as needed. Project managers should maintain close communication with the project sponsor. This enables the sponsor to fulfill their individual responsibilities. Lastly, the project manager is responsible for managing the project effectively and successfully using the framework described within this manual. The organizational culture is quite unique at a nuclear power generation facility. First and foremost, we intend to maintain a safety-conscious work environment. Project managers ensure that all personnel reporting to the nuclear projects organization are trained and proficient in the aspects of a safety-conscious work environment. Organization, direction, and oversight. The nuclear project senior management team will set the direction for the nuclear project organization. They will also provide governance, oversight, and support to the project management team. Procedure governance. Procedures are required to be followed. In addition, we want to ensure that all applicable fleet and site policy and procedure guidance is utilized and followed. Interactions with other organizations. Nuclear projects interact extensively with other organizations. Project managers must be aware of the requirements contained within governing procedures of the outside organizations. Work environment. The work environment on the power generation facility, specifically in the nuclear industry, is highly regulated and very detail-oriented atmosphere. It's meant to ensure that proper safety, radiological practices, and human performance precautions are utilized. You can expect to endure regularly scheduled assessments, inspections, and audits. These ensure that the most effective use of resources and proper leadership techniques are being utilized. The most common monitoring aspect of a project is done via the Project Oversight Committee and various other oversight agencies. These agencies include those such as the Department of Energy, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the Electric Power Research Institute, or EPRI, the Institute of Nuclear Power Operations, or INPO, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Project management process flow. This process flow is a list of sequential steps meant to guide the project activities in the most effective manner possible. The first step is initiation. This is the first step in starting a new project. It establishes the reason for the project. It also defines the business value, this gain, that's to be gained. This information is used to gain buy-in from stakeholders, but also achieve project acceptance and ultimately funding for the task. The second portion is planning. This is typically one of the most extensive portions of the project process. Planning addresses how the project objectives are to be met. It defines the project stages to include setting measurable objectives, identifying the deliverables, producing an effective schedule, and planning the tasks to complete the schedule and produce the high quality deliverable. Next step is execution. The execution of the task combines all planned inputs and puts them into action. The goal of this step is to successfully create a high quality deliverable. During the execution, we'll have specific monitoring and control processes. This includes data gathering, data management, and analytical processes. The goal is to understand, influence, and predict the outcomes of the project activities. It also intends to ensure that the deliverable meets the project objectives. Finally, the project closeout. Project closeout finalizes all project activities, formally closes the project, and transfers the completed deliverable to the final owner. The project should be assessed, completion should be ensured, and lessons learned or best practices should be documented. Now we'll discuss the project initiation. The objective of this is to obtain project authorization and approval. It establishes the project charter and authorizes the project manager to utilize company's resources. First step is the study. Study intends to evaluate internal and industry operating experience on items such as cost and cost estimate accuracy, resource requirements, task durations, task risks, and lessons learned. The options on how to move forward with the project should be determined and should include cost estimates. The recommendations should be made as to which option to pursue. Next is our project authorization. The process is determined by project cost. For projects greater than $5 million in estimated cost, must undergo a cost estimate review board. In addition to the review board, a business applicability determination from leadership will be made. Cost comparison estimates on vendor proposals should be conducted. This compares proposals from various vendors based on things such as similar projects, internal and external operating experience, accounting guidance, the work breakdown structure, guidance from the SMEs, and stakeholder input. It should be included, it's important to include the engineering, procurement, construction costs, and overhead capital expenses. During this time, known risks and possible contingencies should be applied and included. The plant review group confirms the project sponsor and the project manager, endorses the project team, and authorizes and commits resources. Next is the file organization strategy. The strategy establishes a means to organize and control various types of information collected during the project. This can include notebooks, file drawer folders, or more commonly, electronic files of information. Some information is only needed while the project is active. However, other information will be saved for future reference to help plan for future projects. As a part of this strategy, that information should be organized and a means to control and document appropriately should be established. Lastly is the project development package. This document describes the project scope document, a high-level schedule, and a high-level cost estimate. This is developed early in the project management lifecycle, includes estimation and a scheduling process requiring 1 to 3 estimates depending on project cost. Next is our project planning. The objective of the project planning is to establish how the project will commence and objectives will be achieved. First portion of project planning is the project plan. This describes how the project team will implement the 5 project management processes. It guides the project implementation, documents planning assumptions, constraints, and decisions. It facilitates communication among stakeholders. It also defines management reviews. It provides a baseline for progress measurement and project control, and defines performance metrics and reporting protocols. Next is the project scope. The scope identifies the project objectives and deliverables. It forms the basis for an agreement between the project and the stakeholders. It's important to ensure that the scope statement is reviewed and approved by stakeholders. This can prevent future scope change issues. It's also important to identify and consider stakeholder needs and expectations when establishing scope. Next is our work breakdown structure. This work breakdown structure is the basis for defining work as it relates to the project objectives. It establishes the structure for managing the work to completion and is the result of dividing the overall project into manageable work products. Certain attributes of the work breakdown structure include realistic and confident schedule durations and cost estimates. The work element can be assigned to a single individual or a work group, and the status and completion of the deliverable should be measurable. This structure increases the accuracy of the schedule and the cost estimates. It also enhances control when implementing the project. Next will be our schedule development and management. Schedule development defines the activities required for a project at a detailed level. It determines the sequence of activities and the critical path. The critical path determines the length of the project. It typically has the minimal float. It also determines the ability to fast track and perform tasks in parallel. It estimates the resources needed for the activities. It can predict the allocation of more resources to crash the schedule. However, it may result in higher costs. It estimates the duration of each activity and available float. And it builds a detailed schedule that's meant to define the sequence and the interfaces for the activities, determines the activity sequencing based on interdependencies with other tasks. It includes activity resource estimating and activity duration estimating. Lastly, it establishes the monitoring and controls needed to accomplish the activities. The schedule management plan describes how updates will be developed, how performance is monitored, how variance analysis is going to be performed, what will constitute a schedule change, what level of approval is needed to make a schedule change, and the level of change that requires a new baseline schedule. Next is our human resource plan. Human resource plan is a contract between the project manager, the project team, and the senior management team. It ensures that enough personnel are available at each stage of the project. It also prevents the hindering of the goals of the functional organization where the individuals are borrowed. This plan should include the names of the individuals roles and responsibilities, the length of time that they are needed, and the percentage of full-time effort required to the project. Next is our cost management plan and earned value. These describe how cost is going to be monitored, managed, and controlled, how cost changes will be identified, communicated, approved, and integrated. It involves assigning estimated project costs over a period of time, typically monthly or annually. It also converts the project estimate into a scheduled plan that's used to assign resources and monitor costs. The earned value analysis is a method to manage costs. It integrates those costs, schedule, project progress, and scope, and it's used to project future performance, costs, and completion dates. Cost control means to determine what is causing the variance. At that point, the decision is to be made if remedial action is needed to align the project performance with the project plan. Next is our risk management plan. This describes how the project is going to address risk. It describes the criteria used to determine which risks are acceptable and which require contingency plans or even immediate action. The objective is to reduce the probability and consequences of events. The goal is to be proactive in anticipating and preparing in advance. This plan should be routinely reviewed with stakeholders as conditions change. It's important to know that assumptions are risks to be managed. Techniques for identifying risks include brainstorming and analyzing items such as strengths and weaknesses of the team, specific opportunities, and threats to the schedule, cost, and scope of the project. Sources that are used to help identify risks include project lessons learned, corrective action programs, operating experience, expert opinions, and assessments. Next portion of planning revolves around procurement. The objective of procurement is to ensure that the required materials and services are available at each stage of a project. It's also important to ensure that this procurement plan reflects the required quality and cost. It should identify what project needs can be best met by procuring products or services outside the organization. It's important to include adequate time for materials and products that may have long lead times. Next is our quality plan. The quality plan identifies the quality standards that are to be applied and determines how they're going to be achieved. It's important to establish these quality plans early in the planning process. This is where the ability is high and the cost is low. This will prevent high recovery costs later in the project. There are 3 quality management processes utilized. Quality planning, which determines the internal and external quality standards needed for success. Quality assurance, this ensures proper processes are implemented to meet the project requirements. And quality control. The quality plan is defined and controlled by technical processes, regulatory requirements, administrative processes, procedures, industry standards, and project requirements. This process is meant to help control things such as human performance, engineering, work planning products, materials, field work, and vendor quality. A useful tool is a readiness review, and it's meant to assess the adequacy of resources, the incorporation of quality assurance activities, the adequacy of project controls, the effective corrective actions, the accuracy of schedule and progress reporting, and the effectiveness of performance indicators. The next portion of planning is the communication plan. This determines the information and communication needs of the stakeholders. It ensures that the stakeholders' needs are considered, identifies the frequency of the meetings of the project team, establishes how to keep stakeholders informed, and incorporates feedback from stakeholders should they be offered to the project team. The next item is our organizational plan. The organizational plan intends to identify, document, and clarify the project roles, responsibilities, and reporting relationships. Typically include a single point of contact from the organizations involved. And it uses tools such as team building activities, training, rewards, and recognition. This plan requires an understanding of the expectations among the team members, the functional manager, and the project manager. Data management. This step describes the process and infrastructure for project data management. It specifies the use of items such as data management tools, review processes, retention policies, and how the deliverable is intended to be transferred to the end user. Regulatory strategy. This describes the strategy, plan, and time frame for obtaining required regulatory permits and for meeting regulatory reporting requirements. It's important to include regulatory affair members in planning and implementation of the project to prevent delays later in the process. Next is the safety plan. Safety plan identifies specific responsibilities, safety requirements, medical treatment provisions, job safety analysis that are used to develop a safety plan for each task, safety inspections and training, safety reporting, and housekeeping. A unique aspect of project planning with nuclear is the LR plan. This identifies the radiation or contamination exposure and radioactive waste generation for project installation and testing, as well as during the plant long-term operation and maintenance. This plan should include radiological dose estimates, as well as the number of personnel to be exposed throughout the duration of the project. Last portion of the project planning is the project assurance plan. This revolves around cost recovery decisions, and they should be based on the most recent information available. They should be made in the best interest of the ratepayers. They should be well documented, and the cost recovery decision should also be retrievable. The next step is project execution. The objective of the execution is successful coordination of people and other resources to carry out the project plan. The execution drives the actions needed to accomplish the project objectives. And as always, there's a primary focus on safety. Utilizing effective pre-job briefs, promotes high communication among the members, highlights error traps, uses proper situational awareness, coaching and observation opportunities, and proper contractor oversight. The first portion of execution is their kickoff and team meetings. Meeting agenda enables members to come prepared to these meetings. An action item list is useful to be aware of owners and due dates. The kickoff meeting should be used to introduce the project team and set the communication expectations. It's also useful to involve team members in the development of things such as the project scope, schedule, risk identification, and communication plans. The turnover meeting is essential to updating progress and aligning different shifts so that progress is not lost due to a rotating shift schedule. Communication and information distribution. It's important to ensure the communication with the project stakeholder is effective. You want to ensure that the appropriate level of management is informed and engaged. A common method is using monthly project reviews. These include things such as progress updates, financial performance, summaries of actions, milestone reviews, risk matrix updates, and contingency plan updates. It's important to recognize the project successes during this time. The last portion of project execution is implementation quality. You want to ensure that personnel maintain their qualifications and skills necessary to perform the tasks at hand. You want to identify critical steps and apply risk management strategies. You want to incorporate operating experience as necessary. You want to conduct independent reviews as needed. It's important to identify training needs for the end user. It's also important to manage the vendor performance and requirements. Mock-ups and simulations should be utilized as needed. And the proper use of human performance tools should always be utilized to minimize project risk. It's important to maintain constant communication between the designer and the installer. You want to provide adequate vendor oversight, perform all required quality assurance actions, and ensure that the entire product functionality is completed. Next is our monitoring and controlling activities. The purpose of these activities is to ensure project objectives are met by monitoring and measuring progress and performance regularly. To identify variances from the plan so that remedial actions can be taken to achieve successful realignment should it be needed. First step is performance monitoring, variance analysis, and reporting. This helps the project manager determine if remedial action is needed to bring the future performance back in line with the project plan. It also enables the project manager to understand the basis for the status and predict future progress and performance. Quality control involves monitoring specific project results to determine if they comply with the quality standards. It identifies ways to mitigate causes of unsatisfactory results, and it should be performed throughout the project via quality control hold points and quality assurance inspections. Risk monitoring and control involves items such as tracking identified risks, identifying new risks, ensuring the execution of risk plans, evaluating the effectiveness of risk plans, and developing new risk responses as they're needed. The integrated change control is an act of coordinating changes across the entire project. It ensures the impacts to the entire project are considered, evaluated, documented, and communicated. This process includes being proactive and influencing the factors that can create change, maintaining the integrity of performance measurement baselines, determining that a change has occurred, incorporating changes into the project plan as needed, and managing the actual changes as they occur. Project indicators help a project manager determine if activities are meeting the desired standards. These indicators include industrial safety compliance, such as measuring lost time accidents, OSHA recordable events, first aid reports, and near misses. Nuclear safety compliance. This includes configuration errors, working on the wrong component or system, failure to follow station work practices, and other human performance errors that challenge systems that are important to safety. Radiological safety performance. This compares project performance with the established expectations for dose and contamination control. The quality of all deliverables. Earned value analysis. Schedule performance, which is conducted by calculating schedule performance index. Cost performance. This is done by conducting cost performance index calculations. And then implementation productivity. The project management program assessment identifies and implements change for continuous project performance improvement. This assessment requires a self-critical and objective evaluation of performance against industry standards of excellence. Corrective action activities include problem identification and items such as reporting, evaluating, correcting, and trending. Lastly is our project closeout. The objective is to formalize the acceptance of a project or project phase and bring it to an end. It's encouraged that pre-turnover walkdowns with all future stakeholders and owners are conducted. The first step is functional testing. Testing is performed to demonstrate that the system or component performs as intended, the activity has been correctly implemented, the design is correct, the design bases are still valid, the technical specification limits have not been exceeded, and the interface functions are as expected. This testing should consider items such as operational modes, system startup and shutdown, and interfaces with other system components. Next is the scope verification and acceptance. This process formalizes the acceptance of the project scope via the stakeholders. It involves reviewing the work products and results to ensure that all are completed correctly and satisfactorily. Ensures that the conduction of the final inspections, walkdowns, reviews, and audits occur. Confirms the results conform to the requirements. It involves documenting the work products and deliverables and that they are completed correctly. Lastly, it involves gaining the formal sign-off of the deliverable from the project. Startup and integration is the integration of deliverables into the organization's normal operation. It's important to develop a lessons learned database. This will help future projects be more effective, and it's suggested to be done during but no later than the end of each project phase. For project costs exceeding $20 million, a lessons learned review will be conducted by senior management. The develop initiation basis and documents for the next phase. This is the development of the project authorization package and business case for requesting additional funds as needed moving into the next project phase. It also compares the authorized funds to the actual cost, along with identifying and justifying future anticipated costs. You want to complete documents associated with the accounting processes. The project manager confirms the in-service date is correct in the nuclear asset database, that the allowance for funds used during construction charges are stopped based on the in-service date. Final commitments such as invoices have been paid and that final charges are reflected in the project totals. That project-related material issues, including stranded inventory adjustments, are resolved and reflected in the project totals. For projects costing greater than $20 million, a post-project benefit assessment will be conducted via senior management. The next step is to archive project information for historical reference. This intends to capture information to support planning for future projects. Existing processes should be reviewed to see what information is already being retained, and decisions should be made on what additional project information should be archived and how project archives should be retrieved in the future. Demobilization of the project includes the reassignment of team members, the disbanding of facilities utilized during the project, and the removal of equipment and materials from the field with the specific culture of leaving the area better than you found it. Lastly is the contract closure. The customer will verify that materials or services are acceptable, that the records are updated, and that the results are filed and archived. This should ensure the objectives are met for the procurement management plan, the contract management plan, contract documentation, and that the customer's contract closure procedure is fulfilled. Updates to procedures or guides based on the project or vendor feedback will happen here. This is where the customer and the vendor agree that each party's obligations have been met and a procurement audit will be performed. Following the closeout of the project, it's very important to celebrate. Embrace the work that has been accomplished, appreciate the connections and contacts made, and update your individual experience for future projects. Thank you for your time. These are a list of references used, and I look forward to the feedback from this project manager.